What if I told you that the most terrifying monster isn't hiding under your bed, but could be prowling your neighborhood? An unsettling thought, isn't it? But for the citizens of California during the mid-80s, this was no mere figment of imagination. It was a stark, chilling reality. They were living under the grip of a faceless phantom, an unseen terror, now known to the world as the Nightstalker. This sinister figure was like no other, not just for the heinous crimes he committed, but for the terror he instilled in the hearts of millions. The Nightstalker was a nameless dread, an unknown entity lurking in the shadows of the night, turning the Golden State into a landscape of fear. His identity was a mystery, hidden behind the dark veil of the night, adding an extra layer of horror to his already terrifying deeds. His reign of terror was not confined to a specific area or demographic. The Nightstalker struck indiscriminately, his victims as diverse as the state itself. From the bustling heart of Los Angeles to the quiet suburban neighborhoods of San Francisco, no one felt safe. The fear was palpable. Every lock was checked twice, every window carefully sealed, every strange noise a potential threat. But despite their best efforts, the Nightstalker always found a way in. His methods were unpredictable, his motives unclear. He was the embodiment of chaos and fear, an urban monster breathing life into everyone's worst nightmares. The Nightstalker was an enigma, a faceless villain in a real-life horror story. The uncertainty surrounding his identity only intensified the fear, making him an even more formidable figure in the public's imagination. The Nightstalker did not just rob people of their lives, he stole their sense of security, their peace of mind, their ability to sleep soundly at night. He was not just a criminal, he was a specter, a nightmare come to life, a shadow that grew with the setting of the sun. As the sun set, the Nightstalker rose and the city held its breath. The nightmare began not with a scream, but with a whisper. A whisper that would soon echo through the streets of Los Angeles. The city of angels turned into a city of fear. In the early months of 1984, the Nightstalker began his reign of terror. His first crimes were burglaries, but there was something different about them. They were violent, erratic, and seemingly random. There was no common thread between the victims. They were of different ages, genders, and ethnicities. They lived in different neighborhoods, from the affluent Hollywood Hills to the suburban enclaves of Monterey Park. As the weeks passed, the crimes escalated. The burglaries turned into assaults. The assaults turned into murders. Each act more violent and gruesome than the last. The Nightstalker didn't just break into homes, he invaded them, turning sanctuaries into scenes of horror. The city was on edge. The randomness of the attacks meant that anyone could be a victim. There was no rhyme or reason to his selection process. It was as if he was playing a perverse game of Russian roulette with the city of Los Angeles. The terror was compounded by the fact that the Nightstalker didn't seem to care about leaving evidence behind. He left fingerprints, footprints, even left behind his own blood at crime scenes. It was as if he was taunting the police, daring them to catch him. But despite the mounting evidence, the police were stumped. The Nightstalker was a phantom appearing and disappearing at will. He struck without warning and vanished without a trace. The city lived in a state of perpetual fear, never knowing when or where the Nightstalker would strike next. And then, the murder stopped. For a brief moment, the city breathed a sigh of relief. But the respite was short-lived. The Nightstalker was simply biding his time, preparing for his next wave of terror. The pattern was clear, there was no pattern, and that made him all the more terrifying. While the city slept, the hunters were wide awake. In the quiet depths of the night, law enforcement officers were relentlessly pursuing the elusive figure known as the Nightstalker. This was no ordinary manhunt. It was a race against time, a desperate attempt to catch a phantom who seemed to vanish into thin air. Over the course of several months, detectives found themselves faced with a puzzling array of crimes that seemed to bear no pattern. Homes were targeted at random, the victims chosen without discernible reason. The Nightstalker was unpredictable, a trait that only added to the difficulty of the investigation. Even with the entire force alert and on the lookout for any signs of this sinister figure, the evidence was frustratingly sparse. Fingerprints were smudged or non-existent, the scenes of the crimes meticulously cleared of any clues that might lead to the perpetrator. The Nightstalker was careful, leaving behind nothing but fear in his wake. The investigators worked tirelessly, sifting through every piece of evidence, no matter how insignificant it seemed. Each shrouded lead, every unturned stone, could potentially hold the key to the Nightstalker's identity. Yet, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the breakthrough they were hoping for seemed increasingly elusive. In the face of such challenges, It would have been easy for the force to lose heart, but they pressed on, fueled by the grim determination to bring the Nightstalker to justice. Despite the mounting pressure and the public's growing fear, they remained steadfast, their resolve unbroken. Indeed, the hunt for the Nightstalker turned into a grim chess game. Each move was calculated, each strategy carefully planned. The stakes were high, the tension palpable. Yet, despite the tireless efforts of the officers, the Nightstalker remained always one step ahead, slipping through their fingers like smoke in the wind. In the end, the Nightstalker was as elusive as a ghost. He moved through the city undetected, leaving only a trail of terror in his wake. Despite their best efforts, the Nightstalker remained a ghost. Every monster makes a mistake, and the Nightstalker was no different. In the heat of the summer of 1985, the city of Los Angeles was held captive by fear, but it was also buzzing with a determination to end the terror. The breakthrough in the case that would finally lead to the Nightstalker's capture was as unexpected as it was crucial. It was a combination of relentless police work and a vigilant public that turned the tide. The detectives, tirelessly combing through evidence, managed to lift a single shoe print from a crime scene, a print that matched a rare shoe brand, only available in a few stores in the country. This clue was like a beacon in the dark, a tangible link to the elusive predator that had been terrorizing the city. Meanwhile, the public, armed with composite sketches and descriptions, kept their eyes open and their senses alert. They were not just victims, but active participants in their own safety and the pursuit of justice. Every strange car, every suspicious behavior was reported and investigated. The city was no longer a hunting ground, but a web of watchful eyes and ready action. Then, the moment of reckoning arrived. A man attempting to steal a car was recognized by a resident from the police sketches. The alarm was raised and the neighborhood sprang into action. They chased the man, cornered him, and kept him detained until the police arrived. The Nightstalker, the faceless terror, had a face now. He was Richard Ramirez. It was a victory not just for law enforcement, but for the people of Los Angeles. They had refused to be mere victims. They stood up, they watched, they acted, and they caught a monster. The nightmare was over, but the horror was just beginning. The city could finally breathe, but the wounds were deep, the scars lasting. The face of the Nightstalker was known, but the true depth of his darkness was yet to be revealed. When the monster is unmasked, what do we see? A man, and that is perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. The Nightstalker was not a mythical creature from a horror story, but a real flesh and blood man. Richard Ramirez was his name, and he was not from the netherworld but from El Paso, Texas. His trial was a spectacle. His face splashed across every newspaper and TV screen. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and in 1989, he was found guilty of all charges. His sentence, death. But, as it often is with these things, the man behind the monster became something of a public persona. Some saw in him a dark fascination, a twisted celebrity. Letters of admiration flooded his prison mail. Some even went as far as to marry him behind bars. Such is the perverse allure of infamy. However, the true toll of the Nightstalker's reign of terror was not in the courtroom or the tabloids, but in the hearts and minds of his victims and the public. His crimes left a scar on the psyche of California. Families locked their doors for the first time. Children were warned not to stay out after dark, and a sense of fear permeated the Golden State. Years passed, and the man known as the Nightstalker died not by the hand of the executioner, but of natural causes in prison in 2013. Yet his shadow looms large. His crimes, his face, his name, they all remain etched in the annals of true crime history. It's a chilling reminder of the human capacity for evil, of the monsters that walk among us, not in the dark corners of our imagination, but in broad daylight, in our neighborhoods, in our cities. The Nightstalker's reign of terror ended, but his legacy lives on. A chilling reminder of the monsters that walk among us. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.